Ladies and gentlemen, you're in for a treat. I'd like to introduce Bill McDermott. He's the President and CEO of SAP Americas and Asia Pacific, Japan, and Corporate Officer of SAP AG. With $12.9 billion in sales, SAP is the largest business software company in the world. Since he joined SAP almost 5 years ago, he delivered a revenue growth of 18 consecutive quarters, growing revenue, market share gains, and increases in customer satisfaction. On a final note, I want to talk about Bill's financial acumen. When he joined SAP Americas, the stock of the company was $9.75. Yesterday when I checked it, it was $50.50. And when you look at it in terms of creating value for the company, he increased SAP's value by close to $50 billion in 5 years. Please join me in welcoming Bill McDermott.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be with you.
What would you like to talk about?
Whatever you want to cover.
All right, let's start with the deli.
Okay. What do you want to know?
What was your vision when you were 16 years old and you went to your parents and said, I want to run a deli?
Well, I thought it was a good idea to consolidate 3 jobs into one. Because at the time I had 3 jobs. One was working for the town, the other was being a busboy in a restaurant, and the other was working at a supermarket. And that seemed like a lot for a young kid, so I found this delicatessen. And at the time I added the 4th job and subsequently made an offer on the place and ended up buying it. And of course, when I say buy it, I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I bought it on notes, meaning you were broke, but you got somebody to take a chance on you. And the deal was, I pay you in notes in 12 months, and if I fail to make a payment, you get your business back. If I make my payments, it's mine. So that's how it all started.
And what was your marketing strategy?
Well, at the time, let's face it, I didn't have a big marketing department. In fact, the idea at the time was to get an identity around customer service, because I tried to learn from what my competitors weren't doing. A lot of times we focus on what they are doing, focus on what they're not doing. And at the time, my competition was 7-Eleven. So the marketing strategy was to figure out what the biggest competitor wasn't doing well and capitalize on it. So we identified a target market of senior citizens, because 7-Eleven didn't deliver, of blue-collar workers, because what we learned about blue-collar workers is they got paid on Friday night and they were broke by Sunday morning. So if you can give them credit and give it to them in a notebook and trust them, they'd always come back and pay you. So that was the second target market. And the third was high school kids. And the idea there was to get the high school kids to walk an extra block past 7-Eleven in my store. So one day I went outside 7-Eleven and realized they were lining kids up, and you all remember this, don't you? 4 at a time. They never let 5, 6, 7, or 8 in the store. God forbid they get double the sales. But they made the assumption that there could be some theft at hand here, so they let them in 4 at a time. What do we know about kids? Don't treat them like kids. So we let them in great numbers, put some video games in there for them to play, and treated them like adults. And that was the beginning of a pretty good marketing plan. So we didn't try to do everything. We focused in on our target audience, gave them great customer service, and made them happy. And that was the plan.
And what was your exit strategy?
Exit strategy was, I don't want to slice bologna for the rest of my life. So at the time I was 21 years old, sold the business, and went to another interesting career at Xerox, where I started knocking on cold doors in New York City.
Yeah, but first you had to knock on Xerox. How did you get the job?
Well, it was an amazing story, actually. At the time, IBM and Xerox were regarded as the 2 premier sales training programs in the country. So I had decided I was going to go to work for either IBM or Xerox. And I got an interview first at Xerox. And when I was driving into the train station with my dad, He drops me off at the train station. He said, Bill, I wish you good luck today and real proud of you and go get them, basically. And I said, Dad, I appreciate it, but I guarantee you I'm coming home tonight with my employee badge in my pocket. That's a guarantee. So my father said, you know, obviously trying to let me off easy. Well, I'll be proud of you either way, just do your best. So I go through a series of interviews like many of you have, and I get to the last interview, and I'm in the waiting room. And I think I might have been forgotten about, because I'm sitting next to another guy on the bench, and we're both waiting for the head guy to bring us in for the final interview. Well, I go up to the executive secretary and say, can you get me in? I've been waiting an hour, and it's time. I get in, go through a nice meeting, and the gentleman, Emerson Fullwood, politely says, Bill, thank you, it's been a good interview, and have a great night, and the HR department's going to get in touch with you. And of course, I already had my plot already laid down. I don't think you understand one small thing, Mr. Fullwood. Gee, what is that, Bill? I have never broken a promise to my father. And I told my father that I was coming home with my employee badge in my pocket tonight. Well, like you, he giggled a little bit and said, hey, as long as you check out all right, you haven't committed any crimes, you're hired. And that was the beginning of the career at Xerox.
What did you do at Xerox to make how did you get Puerto Rico? How did you end up with Puerto Rico as a territory? Did you speak Spanish?
I didn't. I did not. I missed that class in school. I should have taken it. Basically, I had worked my way up through the ranks at Xerox, and it was time to run what we called a district or a branch. And this was Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And we just had a newborn baby boy, and like a few days old, and the offer came my way to run Puerto Rico. And I think the company probably figured, young guy, what's the worst thing that can happen? They're last in the country anyway. It's not like the biggest operation. Let's give them a chance. It needs some life. Let's see what happens. So I took Puerto Rico and went into Puerto Rico with a very similar story as the deli. What is our addressable market? What kinds of things are standing in the way of us winning? Listen, don't tell, and learn for a couple of weeks what needed to be done to win. We built a good plan, built an excellent team, executed at a high level, and it went from 59th to 1st.
How many people did you change in the organization?
At that time, not a lot. I mean, Puerto Rico was a very stable organization. They just needed to be energized, needed a plan, and needed to be aligned around success. And we defined success in a whole new way. And I was blessed because I had a really great team that wanted to win. They just needed a plan and some motivation. In fact, one of the things I learned, when you ask people what motivates them, you might be surprised what you'll learn. I asked them, what motivates you? I mean, God, let's figure it out. And they said, we want to have a holiday party. And we want to have Gilbertito Santa Rosa, who is the #1 salsa singer in the world, come in here and perform for us if we perform for you. I said, I'll tell you what, if we go from 59th to 1st, Gilbertito's coming in. Gilbertito came in. We were at the El San Juan Hotel at 3:30 in the morning, and I was still writing checks to Gilbertito asking him to stay for another hour.
Muy bien.
Sí. Progresando en español.
Sí.
Very good, Gerhard.
So, how did you make the switch from a comfortable position at Xerox, where you were a corporate director, which is a prestige position, and then you risk it all and go to a Gartner Group?
That's a very deep question. And when I say deep, if you're a person like me that spends 17 years committing your soul to a company, and every day you get out of bed to win for that company, it's really difficult to change. And no one should underestimate that. And one of the recent examples I see is Billy Donovan had his heart with Florida. It's difficult to change. But I felt at the time, had I not made the move then, after 17 years, I was going to spend my entire career with one company, albeit a great company. And that would not have been a bad choice at all. But I felt to learn more, experience more, get a more diverse background and knowledge set so I could be competitive regardless of the times, the space, or the kind of company, I needed to change. And what I liked about Gartner is that they provided the thought leadership, the information technology experience, the deep understanding of IT that I feel most executives really need to have under their belt to compete in this global marketplace. So it was difficult, it was painful, it was like going through a divorce, but in the end, I felt that it was the right thing for me in the long run. And I think it's proven out to be a pretty good decision.
If you had to do a game analogy, the game at Xerox was what? Basketball?
I think the game at Xerox was, I would say basketball is fair in the sense that it was a great company. It was very team-oriented. Team Xerox was a very common thing for us to rally around. And it had a culture like a family. And there's nothing but good things in my heart for Xerox.
And what was the culture at Gartner like?
Gartner, I think, was a little more eclectic, a little more based on thought leadership, a little more appropriate, I think, in terms of knowledge and actually changing the game by applying knowledge and skill to automate a business model, a business process, or change the outcome for a company. So you got a whole different perspective from Gartner. Also a great company and a great brand.
So you had to enter a new knowledge universe where you had to absorb a lot of knowledge much faster.
Exactly. And you know, I came up with a saying a long time ago, it hurts so good. And if it doesn't hurt and you don't feel any pain from change and these new experiences, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And if you choose not to push yourself hard enough now, you'll regret it later. Because you'll wake up someday and somebody's going to have a surprise for you that you're not going to like because you're not competitive or you don't have the skill set you need to advance.
So what you're saying is if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even less.
Absolutely.
Now, you transitioned over to Siebel. What attracted you to Siebel?
Siebel was interesting. At the time, if you all remember this, applications were very hot. CRM, Customer Relationship Management, which all of you know a lot about, was the hottest application in the world. Siebel was the market leader, had a great brand, a wonderful reputation, especially for sales excellence. So to have a chance to get back in a big, big company that was fast growing, this was after sort of right around the dot-com bust, actually, and just right around 9/11. Right. Incidentally, the quarter I started in the company was the 9/11 quarter, which is kind of interesting. But it was all of those high-powered sales, selling to sales, marketing, field service, internet professionals. It was everything I could have imagined around the word exciting.
But the culture, the way I understood it from various sales trainers who were working with the company, was a little bit on the militaristic side.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'll choose to say very centralized in its approach. But hey, you know, you got to give them a lot of credit. They took an idea, a small company, and made it a big, highly successful company. I think what we all have to recognize with companies is sometimes what got you from there to here is not going to get you from here to there. And frankly, as you see the application world play out, one trick doesn't get it done. Integrated platforms and integrated systems seem to be more interesting to customers because it's a lower cost and a better return, and frankly, end-to-end processes are what customers want. So I think it did great in its era, and hats off to that, and the era's changed, and that's why I went to SAP.
Now, Siebel is now owned by a competitor of yours, ironically.
Yeah.
And the competitor has sued SAP for what reason?
Something around Tomorrow Now, which was a company that we had acquired to provide competitive maintenance services.
So how do you deal with the bumps in the road to success? You had recently lost your chief technology officer, Shai Agassi, brilliant guy, and then on top of that, the lawsuit from Oracle. How do you deal with that?
What business doesn't have competitors? What business doesn't have bumps in the road and difficult skirmishes to overcome? What business doesn't have good executives that move on and pursue other interests? What business doesn't need to think about succession planning and get ready in the event that an executive does leave, that there's other people on the bench ready to step in and assume those responsibilities? So we don't spend our time wringing our hands about these things. This is the way it is. Change is part of the daily ecosystem and the things that we do. So we learn from these things, we put plans around these things, and we use them as exciting points to rally around and execute around versus worry about.
And that's why you have a little budget.
Exactly.
So describe the first 100 days at SAP. You come in, every year there's a new CEO, and then all of a sudden Bill shows up. Bill who?
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
Well, the first thing is I try to establish a vision. And everybody wants to know who the new woman or man is when you come into an organization. And the vision was going to be very clear. We were going to move from an engineering and a product culture to a customer and value culture. And our objective was no longer going to be to talk about our products. It was going to be to make every customer a best-run business and deliver value to those customers so they, in fact, can be more competitive and more agile and more global in the markets in which they compete. So that was just setting the standard. We're going to have a high standard. The rest was understanding what the problems were. And frankly, the number one problem that we addressed in the first 100 days is the leadership team. It wasn't that they were bad people. It's that they did not share my audacious vision for growth. And if we were going to be in this business, we had a vision at the time to double our size in a couple of years, which was going to require a lot of change, a whole new marketing approach, a whole new sales approach, and a whole new execution approach. And it was going to be tough, really tough. So I leveled with them. And the ones that wanted to stay were few in number. There was actually one out of 14. And he was hired 20 days before me, so I figured he needed a little time. So we rebuilt the team in the first 100 days, focused ourselves on the customer, and left all of our personal agendas at the door. The rule was the most valuable player on this team is going to be the team. And people that didn't feel comfortable in a team culture were not going to feel comfortable signing up for this mission, and therefore we didn't choose them.
How do you find 13 A players in 100 days?
Oh, that's a good question. We interviewed them 7 days a week, morning till night, gave up every weekend, met them in airports, met them at their house. Felt like, since you mentioned basketball, it was like a recruiting exercise. And we had done a lot of research in preparation for this, and we had a lot of good names. But meeting them, looking me in the eye, really understanding what they were all about, was pursued with a tremendous sense of passion. And including my own assistant, which is probably the most important hire a person can make. I mean, I had to do that on the weekends and offer interesting terms and get these people extracted from their current environment. And they did it basically by believing in your word. And what you find over time is the only currency any of us really have is our word. No business card, no title can ever match your reputation on the street. So we had one person talk to another person who talked to another person to corroborate the stories. And fortunately, we put together a heck of a team. Incidentally, all of them are retained today, not one left in 5 years. Not one.
So what are the two top qualities you look for in an A player?
I love intellect, but I love passion more. I've seen a lot of pretty average people on an SAT do extraordinary things because they've got fire in their belly and they want to win. So I look for the passion and that desire to win. And the second thing is, what we do is a pretty sophisticated technology, and it's a pretty sophisticated conversation. So you look for, obviously, some brightness and hopefully some experience around IT.
So how did you create that culture You described it once where everybody plays from the same sheet of music, where you have certain standards that salespeople need to follow in order to be on your team.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, today, ask yourself a question. How many people in my organization know exactly what I want them to do? Exactly what I want them to do. So what we spend a lot of time on at the leadership level is figuring out exactly what we want people to do. And then we communicate to people exactly what we want them to do. We spell out the playbook, we educate and train them on the plays, and then we entrust them with the power to go out and execute. And everybody's in it together. What we insist upon is we don't have renegades that decide that that playbook or that vision isn't the one I want to run with. I want to do my own thing. That might be a good idea, and you're certainly entitled to do that, just not while you're working here. So we had an environment where everybody knew what to do, had the same playbook, and although they had their own personal magic, they essentially followed a methodology which we refined into a science, and yes, I think even an art form. And today, if you ask people, you know, they're waiting for the next play to go in that playbook because it's helped them be very successful.
To what degree do you allow in that playbook room for improvisation and creating things on the spot?
You have to have that. So I think the methodology, the science, and the art is all about that individual internalizing it for her or his needs. Invariably, you'll go on a key meeting, a C-level meeting, the kinds that you go on every day, and you went in with one plan. And darn it, if that decision maker didn't change all the rules right then and there on the spot, you could see by reading the audience, reading the situation, that that was not going to meet the requirements of that executive on that day. You know what you do with the playbook then? See ya. What do you want? And then let them tell you what they want. Yesterday I was in a situation with a rep, and it was clear that his playbook, we were in Toronto, was not what the customer wanted. So it was obvious. I just said to the decision maker, look, let's just thank you for the introduction. We're good with that. What if you had a clean sheet of white paper right now, and you were going to write down the prescription of exactly what we would do for you to make you wildly happy with SAP today? Just tell us. The guy said, well, I would like you to do this, that, and the other thing. And you're saying if we did, we had a good meeting and we're going to go somewhere together, right? Absolutely. Rep clicked right in with me, changed the focus, changed the plan, met the circumstances that were at hand, and executed beautifully. So absolutely, improv and being real and being authentic and in the moment is, above all else, the trait of a great salesperson.
All right, now how do you transpose your leadership and culture? You started with the US and then they gave you South America. Obviously, it's a different ballgame.
Right.
How do you integrate your values into another culture that has different habits of doing business?
That's a great question. Most people think the answer is, well, we're going to go American style, and we're going to fly on over there with the playbook and say, do it this way. See ya. I'm all back to the US. I don't do that. I don't believe in heavy staffs. I think the resources belong in the business, close to the customer. I don't believe in pushing things at people. I believe in setting high standards, having a common vision, locking on to a set of values, having a playbook. But the best way to change a culture is to create pull, where you have something that has been proven time and time again to work, and other people want what you have. So what we've done is created a situation where we did it in one place, got tremendous pull for it in Latin America, and then we ended up doing it now in Asia Pacific, Japan, and we're getting tremendous pull to do it there. So this center of excellence, this sharing of best practices, and this market pull is what I believe in, because it's the only thing that works, the human spirit and the human demand for new ideas and innovation that actually works and delivers results is very easy. It's when you're driving at something that's mundane, not helpful, boring, or staff stuff where you got people filling out forms that turns people off and they resist. As long as they know, especially if they're a sales professional, that they can win and make money doing it your way, they want it.
What creates pull?
Knowledge of success. There's nothing that creates pull more than success. So you got to share the information. So here's how you do it now. That's one way of looking at it. Here's how you could be doing it. And by the way, here's all the people that chose to change. And here's their personal story around what it did for them, what it did for their customers. And instead of making X, they're making X cubed. Now, which plan do you want to be on? And that's it. And once they know that the market demands it, and their customers want it, and they're going to make a lot more money, and they're going to be winners for doing it that way too, there's no issue getting the pull. My biggest issue is having so much pull and so much demand, serving it all and doing that well. That's our biggest challenge. Not getting them to want it, but getting it out to them fast enough in a form that they can digest it.
How do you reward performance in the US versus other countries?
Say thank you. Oh man. It's like everybody in management thinks, well, you got to throw money at it, you got to do contests, you got to do all these things. Hey, if someone does a good job, what is so hard about being nice, singling them out, saying thank you, and meaning it? That's one thing that we don't do enough of. Say thank you. The other thing is set very high standards in your organization. I think the worst thing we can do is insult a great sales professional with too low a plan. So make sure the standards are high. Then the third thing is make sure the plan is real, it's been validated, and people believe in it. And then when they hit the target, pay them. And have no top stop on how much they can make. These comp plans that are out there today, oh gee, if you hit 200% of plan, we just stop paying you. Oh, that's a good idea. Let's take our best sales professionals in the entire world. When they hit their peak performance, let's tell them to go home and watch Oprah reruns. It's a great idea. I can't believe this. Why are these top stops out there? Change that. Blow it up. Let them make tons of money. They should make tons of money.
How do you celebrate the success and how do you have fun with the sales organization?
Oh, that's so easy for me. I think the key is if you love it, be in it. You know, everything from being involved in the day-to-day routine with the customer and loving that work. You got to really like it. Because the people in the organization, they know the difference between the ones that love it and the ones that are going through the motion. So if you're going through the motion, don't do this profession. Find another one. So you got to love it. The other thing is, when you set really high targets and people hit them. How's that? Better? When you set really high targets and people hit them, set up celebrations. And make them big time. Make them as fun as you possibly can. And invest in those celebrations. Think through the details. Make those special magic moments so people want to do it again. We, as an example, actually started a winner's circle trip for the top performers. And I realized that so many people are on the road. How many of you are on the road all the time? And how many of you have won top performer trips and actually to yourself said, oh God, I got to go to that corporate meeting now? How many? Tell the truth. Right. And why is that? Because you're not with your families. You spend too much time on the road as it is. You're a little worn out. And you're looking for a little rest when you can find it. So you'd probably rather stay home or go to vacation with your family than go to a winner's circle trip, especially if it's a dull trip, which most of them are. So the first thing is don't make it a dull trip. Make it a great trip. The second thing is invite families. Yes, including kids. You get the return on that investment 10 times over. And what you do is you create a culture where people feel part of something really special and it becomes like a family. And for those individuals that are single that said, hey, I'm not into the kid thing. I just want to kind of like do the black tie and have a good time. Fine. The kids are in the kiddie pool. Unless you want to swim in a 2-foot pool, you don't have nothing to worry about anyway. So come on. And what happened is this. In the last several years, we had the best trips ever, the best entertainment I could ever imagine. People fight like heck to be a part of this trip. Now I got the wives or the spouse all over it, husbands and wives. Barbara and Dina, my assistant, her husband every year now reminds her what has to be done to make the trip. He wants to be there. And now I even have the meeting with kids, so we can talk to the kids about how they're going to hassle their mom and dad to get them back here again next year. How about that? And that's changing the game. That's changing the culture.
What places did you go to?
We've been to Hawaii. We've been to Grand Cayman Islands. Those type of places.
Right. So what are the biggest, let's talk about the global picture. What are the biggest changes that cause you to be concerned about the future of SAP?
I'm actually not concerned about the future of SAP. I'm really pumped up about the future of SAP, and I'll tell you why. There are basically 3 trends out there that let me feel real good that a lot of customers need our help. 1, globalization. Every customer you talk to now has to have a global plan and look at the world differently. Even if they're not going, let's say, international or global, they still need to think about their suppliers, their supply chain, and the various ways they can serve their customer, whether they're global or not, even though most of them are thinking global. For example, I met with a customer yesterday. They want to buy things and utilize a global supply chain all over the world to source different price points and different value points to enhance their supply chain and enhance the value to their end customer. They are not a global company, but they have to think global. And obviously we know what the multinationals are thinking. Second is consolidation. Every industry I'm talking to now is going through tremendous consolidation, lots of M&A activity, lots of VC money on the sidelines. So you're seeing companies being brought together all the time. What do you need when that happens? Well, you better have a technology platform where you can integrate one company with another, coalesce these business processes, and get the value you promised the capital markets out of the acquisition or the merger. So that's another one. And then, as you think about innovation, what company have you ever talked to that doesn't need a constant innovation cycle? What you find with most companies is they spend 80% of their money on their cash cow because they have to get the money to make their quarterly results. Sadly, they're not changing enough and cutting that 80 down to 70 or 60 so they can free up cash flow to incubate a new idea, incubate a new product, bring that product to market, get that product to scale, and then, yes, have that be the new cash cow. So this is a conveyor belt of innovation that has to constantly be brought to every business. I don't know how you do that without a technology platform to help you. Whether you're designing products or selling products, you have to have that. So I'm real bullish on the future of SAP.
So how do you prepare the company for a rate of growth that is sustainable? SAP has been a consistent growth company, and growth requires capital, brain power, and people. How do you feed that supply?
It's a great question. You know, first of all, a successful company always has a tremendous focus on research and development. So in our company, we disproportionately invest in R&D compared to our peer group competitors. And that's a good thing because that innovation cycle is constantly renewed every year in an annual plan. And we do that in 29 distinctly different industries for large, medium, and small customers. And that's one thing that you have to get right, the R&D machine to sustain the growth. The other thing you have to have is a very clear growth strategy. In our case, we've decided that we're going to grow organically because we believe that smart customers actually care about the way things are designed, integrated, and executed upon. And therefore, we have largely set our sights on an organic strategy where we develop most all of the technology ourselves. Second, we decided that we had to have a broad ecosystem